everyone, I hope you're having a great International Women's Day and are enjoying a lot of the talks at Techno. So today I'm going to be talking about sustainable finance and specifically sentiment analysis of sustainability reports with Azure Cognitive Services. So just a bit of background, I'm Darshna. I'm one of the lead data scientists at ElasticCloud. ElasticCloud are a data science and cloud consultancy. So I've been working here for the last 4 years, developing and productionizing various machine learning models across a range of industries, but a predominant amount of my time has been spent in the energy and finance sector. Prior to ElasticCloud, my background's in neuroscience. I also have my own blog and I run a large data science meetup. So if you find this talk interesting, please feel free to look into all of these kind of resources I've shared here. But in terms of the actual talk and demo, I'm going to cover a little bit about what sustainable finance is, why it's important, what are some of the current challenges in sustainable finance. Then we're going to take a brief look at some of the data sources, models and products available. And then I'll kind of give a bit of an overview of the specific demo before taking you over to the Azure Portal and Python. So what is sustainable finance and why is it important? So atmospheric increases in carbon have been a key attribute of the previous 5 mass extinctions. And whilst those previous mass extinctions have shown patterns of increased carbon taking up to 1 million years to develop, our extremely fast and energy thirsty growth has led to the similar increases in just under 200 years. So this is showing prominent threats to our global diversity, also threats to our food and water supplies, and we're seeing extreme weather conditions and increased emergence of new diseases and infections. So the recognition of this climate emergency has led to some large social movements, particularly by the younger generation. And we've also seen some really ambitious goals set by various companies to become carbon neutral over the next few decades. But additionally, the UN in 2015 set out 17 sustainable development goals, and they range from reducing poverty to creating smarter buildings, to cleaning up some of the mess we've made across our oceans and lands as well. A key attribute of the kind of collaboration between different countries has come out of the Paris Agreement, which has an extremely ambitious goal of limiting global increases in temperature to less than 2 degrees by 2100. So you might be asking, where does finance come into this? Well, finance plays a critical role in being able to mobilise some of the capital required to really drive the investments in a greener economy and a greener world, essentially. So it's estimated between $3 to $5 trillion are needed per year for the next 15 years at least to be able to really deliver against some of these ambitious goals we have to really limit the effects of climate change. So responsible investing is not something new that's to the finance industry. They have been practicing it for the last couple of decades. But what we are seeing a more prominent increase in is better frameworks and structures, the normalization of considering environmental, social and governance issues within the financial risk assessment processes. So it has been sustainable finance has been a rather fast emerging field. So it doesn't come without its challenges. So some of the regulations and laws have not quite kept up to speed, and this has led to various challenges as a result of ambiguities. So particularly with greenwashing, where the greenwashing refers to where a company may seem or portray themselves as sustainable, but they're not actually. So a few examples we have here are of, for example, manufacturing companies issuing green bonds to help their production of electrical vehicles. Recently, McDonald's also changed from plastic to paper straws, but those paper straws actually aren't recyclable under the UK recycling infrastructure. Likewise, L'Oreal have been recently advertising some of their products as vegan friendly, but they've actually been tested on animals. And H&M have quite a elaborate recycling scheme, but when we look under the hood and consider how long it takes for those products to be recycled, the sustainability aspect of it could be questioned. So whilst there is a lack of standardisation and transparency, there are organisations that are putting in place tools and frameworks to try and improve this. So the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board are using tools like XBRL so that companies can tag all of their unstructured data and structured data to really conform to a unified taxonomy, so you can compare and contrast across companies and industries in terms of sustainability. So there are also some data quality issues. Larger companies are able to invest more in really being able to track their environmental impact. Also, there are over 600 ESG providers, and a study by MIT recently showed that amongst the prominent ones, there is as little as 0.4 correlation between them. So you're getting a lot of mixed signals there around how companies are performing in terms of their environmental impact. On the flip side of this, though, it's not going to be a case of one size fits all. So if we take the example of agriculture, the environmental impacts of agriculture could probably be seen easily through satellite data. But if we take that same satellite data and assess the impacts of the electronics industry or sustainable housing, that's probably not as easily quantified. And the final kind of challenge point I want to highlight is previously, while this is improving, there has been a kind of difference of languages spoken amongst financial professionals and environmental scientists. So it's kind of hoped that data science can help bridge the gap there a little bit. But overall, there are a lot of calls for better laws, regulation, data and standardisation. So whilst there are a lot of challenges, there are various companies and organisations putting in a lot of effort to mine as much data as they can, extract as much insight as we can, so we can understand where the gaps are and continuously improve before these climate targets become a bit even harder to achieve. So in terms of data, as I mentioned, we can look at satellite data, we can mine unstructured data from annual reports and sustainability reports. There is a lot of financial stock price data available. NGOs and company websites themselves provide a lot of information. Input-output tables provide patterns of generic economic movement. And then we've got also IoT sensors as well. So in terms of the models that are being used to really try and gain insights from these data sets, we can see a lot of NLP techniques being used, time series, image classification, but also some Bayesian approaches as well. And these are being released in a variety of products. So we can see companies adopting carbon calculators to try and understand their impact on the environment, but also understand where the gaps in their data are. As I mentioned, there are over 600 ESG providers, and more blockchain technology is being adopted. So one clear example of this would be with OpenSC. So they applied RFID tags to fish products so that they could be tracked through the entire supply chain from when they're sourced right to the shop counter. And you can see the various different environmental impacts there as well. So before we get into the demo, I just want to take a quick look at one of the ESG providers, Refinitiv. So this is the kind of information and perhaps a portfolio manager may look at as an initial glance to try and understand how sustainable a company is amongst various other factors within the risk assessment. So Refinitiv provide a score. So here we're just looking at one of the oil and gas providers, Royal Dutch Shell. Out of 100, they score 88. And then they also have these various different environmental, social and governance pillars, which have 10 main themes, right? Ranging from covering their emissions, their innovation, their workforce and community impacts, as well as shareholders, corporate strategy and management impacts as well. So out of, you can see how many companies in the oil and gas industry are considered by Refinitiv. So they have 369. But just to take a quick look at their process in terms of how do they actually get to these ESG ratings, you can see that they are mining a lot of data from various different sources, as I've mentioned, the NGO websites, the annual reports, news feeds, and they're collecting over 450 metrics from these sources. So from these 450 metrics, 186 are considered as universal, so they can be compared and you can gain the same information across various different industries. These are then normalized and weighted, so you can extract the pillar scores for E, S, and G, and then also the overall ESG score. So an additional nice to have is the controversy score. So this is comparing an additional element of the ESG in terms of news feeds. So if a company, for example, has been linked to tax fraud or an oil spill, this will show up in their controversy score. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at a specific example of kind of gaining some ESG insights from sustainability reports. So why would we want to look at the sentiment of sustainability reports over time? Well, as companies try and set more and more targets, change their policies around emissions, around workforce processes, you want to see whether they've achieved these and how quickly they're progressing forward. And this could be ascertained through evaluating the sentiment score over time. So this is quite a hard task in itself. So KPMG were actually looked at a similar kind of use case. Whilst there is a lot of bias inadvertently attributed with sustainability reports as they are self-reported from the companies, there are various standards that most sustainability reports adhere to. So the GRI standards require that there is an equal balance of positive and negative sentiment in these sustainability reports. So KPMG looked at 900 of these reports. They manually labelled them, which was quite challenging, as you can imagine, and highlighted a few kind of key traits that you could get from positive sentiment. So they would talk about achievements and positive expressions. Neutral sentiment was generally quite factual, and negative sentiment talked around urgent calls to action, particular risks identified. And this distribution was not quite equal. As you can see, most of the sentiment, 76% of the sentences were classified as neutral, 3% were classified as negative, and 21% were classified as positive. So they went through the very laborious and kind of time-consuming activity of cleaning those and labeling them. So you're removing out all those stop words, you're tokenizing them, applying lemmatization and things like that. I wanted to get some quick insights from the oil and gas industry specifically. So the oil and gas industry is often targeted as a big component of our climate change aspirations. So I've taken sustainability reports from BP and Shell from 2013 through to 2019. I've uploaded them into my blob storage, and then I'm going to leverage some of the really nice tools that Azure provides to gain some quick insights. So I have uploaded, I've connected my blob storage to Cognitive Search. So Cognitive Search is a tool for a lot of kind of application engineers, I guess. So it is kind of taken for granted that search capabilities are available in a lot of websites. Whether you're on Uber Eats or LinkedIn, you can often have that little nice search capability within the website to get to relevant points without having to trawl through all the elements of the website. So this Cognitive Search specifically allows you to add lots of structured and unstructured data and make it searchable in the form of indexing and then leveraging those indexes through APIs. But one of the other nice features of Cognitive Search is it links to cognitive services. So cognitive services are a range of Microsoft AI APIs, so you can leverage some of their pre-built models across speech, vision, decision making to add additional enrichments to your indexes. So that's what we've done here. We've connected the sustainability reports to Cognitive Search. We are doing the sentiment analysis using cognitive services, and then those enrichments I'm projecting out through a knowledge store as an Azure table. So Microsoft provides a really nice template for looking at some of the out-of-the-box kind of enrichments, but they don't give you one for sentiment analysis. So I'm going to do some basic wrangling in Python, and then we're going to take a look at what the sentiment of these sustainability reports shows over time. Is it improving? Is it staying the same? that kind of thing. So I'm just going to take you over now through to the Azure Portal. So this is the Azure Portal. It's the kind of main interface for interacting with the Azure cloud. You can add lots of resources just by searching for them. So within this resource group here, I've got a few resources that I've created. I've got some storage accounts. I've got my cognitive search and cognitive services. So if I take you into the cognitive search, this is essentially what it looks like. You can, once I'll show you how to add the data, but you've essentially got, you can see your quota here and how many of the calls you've used. If you've got a continuous updating of documents being added, you can monitor them. You can see the indexes there. So I've previously processed the 14 sustainability reports. I'll just show you those actually very quickly. So in my blob here, we've got the 14 documents from the sustainability reports from BP and Shell. And just to show you quickly what they look like. So you can see here, this is a BP sustainability report from 2019. So there's a lot of kind of infographics, a lot of tables, a lot of key metrics, but I'm just going to show you the contents quickly so you can see that it's covering all of the aspects, whether it's their emissions and environmental impact, the safety processes, more about society and their governance. So you can get a lot of information from here. So that's all been uploaded to my blob storage here. And then I'm going to basically attach it. So I'm going to show you the process through the wizard, but you can do all of this programmatically. If you want to add custom search features as well, you can do that using things like Azure Functions or Azure Machine Learning. So I'm just going to show you, as I mentioned, taking you through the wizard. It's very simple. It's just 4 key stages. So to connect to your data source, you just use this drop-down menu, and you just need to add your connection strings and things depending on which storage resource you're connecting to. I already have it connected here, so I would just go through and select that. Takes a little while to validate. Let me see if I have it open on this next tab. Okay, no worries. We can just wait for that to validate. So the key kind of next process, just while that's validating, is this main tab. So this is where you're going to add, okay, there we go. So now it's taken us through to the next stage. So this is where you can attach your cognitive services to leverage those AI APIs, and then you can add your enrichments and save those out to a knowledge store to be used within Power BI or whatever other service you want. So I already have cognitive services there. And then I can go through and attach. So you want to tokenize at the sentence level. So as you can see, you can gain a lot of named entity extractions through this process. So you can extract people's names, organizations, locations, key phrases. You can detect the language if you want. You can translate the text. You can also get PII data. If we change this to sentences, you can also detect the sentiment. So then you want to extract this out to your knowledge store. Okay, so I need to provide a connection string. I will just quickly do that. So I just need to, sorry, I'll just grab this connection string. Just for the purpose of the demo. So you want to put that in there. And then you want to extract out all of this. So if you are using the Power BI template, you will probably want to take note of the elements on the side as well, because you'll need those for connecting your report as well. So if you just go to next, I'm just going to change this to, so we need to give it a new name. So we'll just name it as Techno. And then you can add additional searchable features, facets, things here. I'm not going to add anything. And then we'll go through to the final stage. So here you can set up a schedule. So if you are constantly updating new reports and you have maybe a pipeline that's updating, you can add how frequently you want the process to go through. So you can do it hourly, daily, or at a custom level, and then you just submit. So I already have run through that, and you can see if we go back to the cognitive search, you can see here that we've got 14 records. And it took 23 minutes to process. So here you might get some warnings if it can't process any tables or images, for example, but generally it's quite good. So outputted, we have our knowledge store. So this is a really nice table. So it's tokenized all the sentences for us, and it's given us a sentiment score here. So this is ranging from 0 to 1, with 0.5 being neutral, and then either side of that being positive or negative, depending on how you want to categorize those levels. But you can see it's done a fairly accurate job. So for example, here we're talking about incidents such as thefts of small amounts of money. This particular sentence has been given a very low sentiment score, as you would expect. And then similarly, we've got here talking about minor amendments being made. It's a little bit higher, but it's generally still negative. So it seems to have done a fairly good job so far as an initial output. So what I'm going to do is I'll just show you the template first. So this is what you would, if you wanted to link that table to the Power BI template that Microsoft provide. It gives you a nice word cloud showing you the key phrases. You can get a nice donut chart showing the proportions of different named entities recognized, as well as that in a table format and the geographic locations there. And then if you want to click on the entity, you can see the entity relationships in the form of a graph as well. That one's taking a little bit long to load. If I just minimize this a minute, I can show you probably the entity graph a little bit. Yeah, so you can see things like BP, China Securities Regulatory Commission, Shell Sustainability 2014 Energy Outlook, sustainability reports, and things like that. So we want to look specifically at sentiment. So what I've done is I have used the Azure SDK to connect to my Blob store, and then I've done some very basic wrangling to extract out the sentences and link it back to the year and the specific company it's reported from. So here you can see the distribution of sentences per year, per company. And you can see that overall, the average sentiment score was around 0.5, and that doesn't really change. But then we want to go on to look at how we can categorize that sentiment. So I have basically looked at anything that's below 0.3 as negative and anything above 0.7 as positive. We've looked at the distribution of the sentiment. You can see very small proportions of positive and negative sentiment with a lot of neutral sentiment, which is similar to what KPMG found, so that's reassuring. Here we've binned those into categories, and then we can look at those in terms of changes over time. So I've exported this out to Power BI, which we can kind of see those trends over time. So you can see the average sentiment is very stable at neutral. We've got a few more sentences for BP in comparison to Shell, but not significantly really. And likewise, if we've categorized that sentiment score into positive, neutral, and negative, it's generally quite consistent. We're not seeing a lot of change. One minor change, probably insignificant, but if we just focus on the positive sentiment for BP and Shell, you can see here in 2013, Shell had slightly less positive sentiment than BP, and that seems to be consistent across the years until more recently, where we see that pattern shift. So really easy to use, some great tools there on Azure. I hope you enjoyed that and found it interesting, and thank you for listening.